Your next update at 5 o'clock.
From who is liable to will they litigate, the in-depth dialogue continues on Closing Arguments with Stephen Skirka on NewsTalk 1010.
And welcome back. I'm pleased to introduce Stuart Rudner, who's a prominent employment lawyer in the city of Toronto, and we go a long way back. Stuart, you were my student a long time ago. You were actually interested in criminal law at that time. I'm delighted, to watch the success of your career, and welcome to Closing Argument.
Thanks for having me on.
We want to talk about a very important decision of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, and that's a decision affecting parents who are confronted by the challenge of combining child care and employment. What was the decision reached in this case?
Well, it's an interesting decision, and to make a long story short, you have Canadian Border Services Agency who employs people, and full-time employees are on complicated shift schedules where basically over 56 days there are 5 days on, 3 days off, and Mrs. Johnstone, the applicant in the case, had children and went to the agency and asked to have fixed shift because she could not find childcare on essentially days on, days off as she had scheduled. They said no. They didn't even really consider the request. She filed a human rights complaint. The tribunal said this was discrimination. They appealed this to the federal court, and the federal court agreed and said this was a breach of the human rights code.
So what does that mean now to future cases where people are confronting challenges, a single mother who has to deal with childcare responsibilities, but yet wants to work a day shift? What's the implication for that particular woman?
This is a question I'm getting from our clients.
Well, I'm glad that I'm asking the question.
It's the right question. People are shocked by the decision, but they want to know, what does it mean for me? So if you're an employer, and I'm spending a lot of time answering employers' questions, they're saying, well, what do we do? When someone comes to us and says, I have kids, they're in daycare, I can't work the night shift or the weekends or what have you. And the answer is that you should not do what the Canadian Border Services Agency did in this case, which was basically to brush off the request and not take it seriously.
Yeah, that's the way I read the decision. I read it saying it's not every case where you're going to have to allow the person to work that shift, but at least you have to consider every other option, take it seriously, give the person a valid explanation as to why you're rejecting it. If you do. Am I right about that, Stuart?
You're dead on. I mean, you have to show that you, first of all, I'll take a step back. The employee has to show a legitimate need. It's not every employee with a child who now gets to dictate their hours of work. But if they can show a legitimate need, you as an employer have to assess whether you can accommodate them and what the cost will be to you in terms of money, in terms of scheduling, what have you. And if you're going to ultimately decide that you can't accommodate them, you have to document why.
Right. It can't be a perfunctory checklist. You can't just say, okay, I went through 7 reasons, here they are. Okay, sorry, you have to work the night shift. Am I right?
Or even worse, I've seen employers who are asked to accommodate disability, for example, and they just say, well, look, if you can't lift a box in this warehouse, then you can't work here.
And if that, for example, that single mother feels that was done, she will have an opportunity to challenge it to the Human Rights Tribunal.
She'll go to the tribunal, and you will have the onus of proving that you did give it legitimate consideration. You, the employer, will have to show that you considered it and reached a decision. And if you don't show anything more than, well, we didn't think we could do it, you're out of luck.
Fascinating area of law. It just shows you people think employment law is an interesting story. You just showed us it could be fascinating. I want to invite you back to deal with more issues in this area. Thank you so much for being here today on Closing Argument.
It'd be a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. The time is now 4:50. I'm Steve Skirka. You're listening to Closing Argument.
Weekdays following the 6 o'clock news.
I guess let's start at the beginning.
Sure. The Live Drive with John Tory welcomes National Post columnist and award-winning journalist Christy Blatchford.
Of course they're going to complain. I don't care.
To talk in depth about today's top newsmakers.
Good for the school for having the nuts to do it.
Christy Blatchford.
This lesson's going to have to be reinforced.
You know what they say? Once you go Blatch, you'll never go back.
And so forth.